Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar focused on planning your move from Desk.com to Service Cloud. We have about 45 minutes of content planned for today with Q&A at the end. So let's go ahead and dive into our topics today and get started here. Just as an FYI, Salesforce is a publicly traded company, so as a customer, please make all your buying decisions based on the products that are commercially available. I want to just make sure we share that forward-looking statement. So let's dive into what our actual agenda is today. We're going to kick things off with introductions, and then the majority of today's session lays out 10 questions and planning categories to consider when you're getting started with your transition. So it's all about learning about the transition, beginning to plan your transition. We're going to share some best practices for consideration. We're also going to tell a customer story. And if there's time, I'd like to share a sample timeline to get you thinking about your own transition needs. We'll wrap up with resources and then next steps for you as well. As a quick item of housekeeping, we are recording today's session. You will receive a copy of that recording and a copy of these slides in about 24 hours via email. That's a really popular question. So I do want to note that here in the upfront. For everyone on the line, there are two of us presenting. First, my name is Jessica. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager. I specialize in transitioning our growing customers from Desk.com to Service Cloud. And I've been with the Desk.com team here at Salesforce since 2016, after spending a year in sales focused on small businesses and their needs. And I'm joined by Holly Hampton. Hi, Holly.
Hi, Jessica, and hi to everyone on the line today. Thank you guys so much for joining today's webinar. We're really excited to take you through some important aspects of the transition process from Desk to Service Cloud. I am a Senior Customer Success Manager as well, and I work alongside Jessica to help those customers make a smooth and successful transition from Desk to Service Cloud. I've actually been with Salesforce just under 2 years. I started in 2016, but I only recently joined the Desk team. Before that, I was serving as a subject matter expert in Service Cloud, as well as some of our other products here at Salesforce. So with that, let's jump into today's content. So as success managers, Jessica and I consult and engage with customers of all sizes. Some of them are small and medium businesses, while others are larger enterprises, and they're working to optimize both internal and external support teams, like we do here at Salesforce. So this webinar is a great place to get started no matter what your size is. And as you start your transition plan, we've actually included 10 questions here to get you thinking and talking with your colleagues in support, IT, customer experience, etc. The goal of these questions is to begin to understand first what's working today, and then what's your vision for the future, both near future and in the long term. So this slide will appear again after Jessica and I walk through these categories with you. And keep in mind, with each one, we're going to be asking you some questions. So feel free to write those down if that's helpful to you, or at the very least, just keep them in the back of your mind throughout the session, because they really are going to be valuable in getting you started with planning your transition and understanding your vision. So first, let's talk about your experience with Salesforce. So this is definitely one of the first things you'll want to consider as you plan your move to Service Cloud. Two related questions. One, have you ever used Salesforce? Two, have you ever administered Salesforce? So today, you may be a Desk.com admin. So get thinking, is Service Cloud on your radar for administration as well? Or are you going to allocate a different resource within your organization? Or maybe even take on a Salesforce implementation partner and work with them. As you look towards your requirements and the future features you want to take advantage of in Service Cloud, refer to the resources we've created to help you, like our webinar series, and our Desk to Service Help Center, the Service Cloud trial, which we'll touch on a little bit more later in the webinar, and then most importantly, in my opinion, Trailhead, which is actually a free learning resource. That's something that we actually use heavily in Salesforce as well. It's a really fun and valuable training tool. So let's move on to the next question.
Great, thanks, Holly. So after considering your Salesforce experience, it's an apt time in your plan to talk about your project team and focus specifically on their technical bandwidth. For example, who will those people be and what are their current projects and what does their day-to-day look like? From my experience working with customers, the roles outlined on the screen here tend to take active roles in a transition project. Therefore, we recommend thinking through the technical resources you have on your team because those people should be involved in planning your transition, and they may also take on an active role in the project team. Technical bandwidth is also important so that your project doesn't stall or fall behind due to priority changes. So plan ahead, establish your project team. That way you can make sure you understand at what phases of the transition each person should be actively involved. Another key area to focus early on is what you're looking to get out of Salesforce for your service team. This is a big question, but one that will sit at the heart for planning your move. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about your thoughts and positioning for establishing a vision. So I'm actually going to publish a quick poll here. It's in your GoToWebinar widget. It's an anonymous poll, so only I will see the results, but it's a simple question for everyone on the line today to answer. Today, do you have a documented vision statement for how you deliver service to your customers? Yes or no? And we'll give everyone about 20 seconds here to respond to the poll. This is great. About 50% of you have voted thus far. 60%. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the poll here momentarily. I know some of you are still figuring out where that button is, but with 75% of you voted, I appreciate it. That's awesome engagement. Thank you. The majority of you are saying, no, you don't yet have a documented vision statement for how you deliver service. So that might be a really great place for you to start here. I'll round up here. It's about an 80-20 split, 80 no, 20 yes. So for the 20% of you that said yes, that's awesome. I'm excited to know, how this plays into your transition plan and what that could mean for you here on Service Cloud. So thanks for participating. Okay, so do you have a vision for service in Salesforce? Some of you do, most of you don't. Transitioning from Dust to Service Cloud is a fantastic opportunity to reassess that vision if you have one, and to reassess what your processes and your setup look like so that you can create that vision. This is really my favorite step for planning your transition, and I would recommend reviewing not only your current setup, but also just your internal service-related processes while planning your transition to Service Cloud. Also, to think of it, for those of you who have previously attended maybe a Desk.com admin webinar, maybe recently or a couple of years past, at Desk, we were advocates for building your data model. And that data model was essentially a map of what channels you were leveraging for customer case communication. And then in that map, what kind of data you wanted to collect at the case or customer level. And then how you wanted Desk.com to automate your case lifecycle. So that data map really helped propel what your configuration steps and configuration needs were going to be. And so just like we recommended a pen to paper approach with your data model when you set up Desk, we recommend looking at how you want Service Cloud to be designed to streamline your service processes and taking note. For example, are there disjointed processes or tools your team is required to use today? Or maybe you're noticing there are some response time inefficiencies. Maybe you're tasked with figuring out how easily can your teams collaborate across departments. So this is, like I said, a good opportunity. Outline what's working today and what needs to change for the success of your business. Now, on the next few slides, we're going to focus on some of the granularities, things like channels, data, and features that will help you either maintain or improve both your customer and agent experience. So Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. So this is going to go along with some of the great key points for vision that Jessica just outlined. So channels is actually a great place to start. Channels are how your customers communicate with you. So when you're planning your transition, make sure you ask, what channels do we use to offer support to our customers today? Ask yourself that question. And then ask yourself, are my customers using channels that I don't yet support or offer? So these are the key questions to begin your discussion on channels for your new service solution. Then you'll want to consider if your customers want to communicate with you through channels that you're not currently offering. If so, you may find that Service Cloud offers these options, allowing you to access channels beyond what you already use today. One thing we talk a lot about at Salesforce is connectivity. So one thing I want to remind you of is as technology evolves and grows, your customers are going to be using a lot more channels and devices to communicate, right? So it's important to think about how you can keep up with that evolution in communication. And one of the reasons this is important to think about in Service Cloud is because of a great feature called Omnichannel. An Omnichannel Customer Service Center actually allows your customers to connect seamlessly with your support staff across multiple channels, not isolating communication to just chat or email or phone. So it's not going to matter if they're tweeting at you, if they're texting in, if they're emailing you. Omnichannel consolidates every single interaction, regardless of channel, into one place for effective and efficient communication. And that way your support agents have immediate access, to a holistic picture of the person that they're about to help. It's a fabulous customer experience. So I recommend you work with your team to determine if this is a business goal for your service organization. Related to your channels, I want to expand upon the experience you can create with a more mature and streamlined service solution. So here's the question. What is your customer experience like today? When you're thinking about that, also consider, do your customers love your support site? Does your customer-facing portal effectively allow your customers to network with one another and to self-serve? If the answer to these questions is no, then it's time to reevaluate your existing support site and leverage the power of the Salesforce community. This is going to wow your customers in a way that you haven't yet. I do want to say, though, for those of you taking cases from your support portal or allowing your customers to log in and see their tickets today, those features are also available on the customer community. So whatever you love about your support site now in regard to logging tickets and giving your customers access to their existing tickets, that's still available on the Salesforce community.
Holly, I love that you pointed that out. You and I both get that question a lot, from a customer. Can I continue to support my customers on a customer-facing support site? And the answer is yes. Similarly, I get another top question, and that is about data. Whether it's housing data or what to do with the data you already have from Desk.com, these come up in almost 100% of my customer calls and site meetings. So I typically see customers approach their legacy data, that data that sits in Desk.com, one of three ways. They can take everything with them. They could take some of their data with them, or they could take none of their data with them and start fresh. Any of these options may apply to you, so you'll need to discuss with your team the value and importance of the data that you've stored in Desk.com today. If you don't know about your data yet, then the most important question to ask is, how much of your Desk data do you want access to in Service Cloud? This will determine your data requirements, your storage needs, as well as your data model in the new solution. And a few quick notes: if you have data and storage requirements, I recommend talking to your account executive at Salesforce here. They'll be able to address those questions. And then also, too, to help with some questions you may have about your legacy data, the data that sits in Desk, note that you can request a one-time data or case export from the support team at Desk.com prior to our retirement. Usually that request is made when you're making your move. That way it's the freshest data. That's a CSV file, and it's going to be yours to use either for data management and upload or as an offline reference. Some customers choose just to keep it in that CSV rather than uploading it to Service Cloud. Now, the next question I typically get is, how do I move that data from Desk to Service Cloud? And that's not what this webinar is focused on, but I do want to reassure you, the answer to that question depends on your answer above, based on how much data do you want to take with you, and what does your data plan look like as far as how you're going to store it, leverage it, etc. We have developed a data migration tool. We also have some recommendations available to you in our support center when you're ready to focus on this piece of your transition. Holly and I are covering a variety of topics here today as you begin to get ready for planning your transition. Now, if you are ready to focus on the data piece, note that in May, we're hosting a data migration webinar. We'll mention more about webinars when we cover resources, but I specifically wanted to mention that data migration webinar to you while talking about your data options. And Holly's going to drop in a link for us here that links you to our webinar calendar. And on there, you'll see very early in May, we have some data migration sessions for you. So I do recommend that if you have specifics on just the data section of how to do your migration.
Great, thanks, Jess. And I want to remind everybody, as you're listening to today's session and we're going through each of these 10 topics and questions to be thinking about when planning your move, make sure that you leverage that questions panel on the GoToMeeting or the GoToWebinar, excuse me, window, because we will be reviewing questions after we get through all the content. So if you have questions, definitely type those in there. So let's keep the data conversation going with a little bit more of a specific topic around articles. So when you're thinking about your data, you will also want to think about the knowledge base that you have in Desk, if you have one. So for example, do you have knowledge articles that you'd want to keep and use in Service Cloud? If so, it's valuable to discuss whether or not you'd like to continue using them, whether they need to be refreshed and updated, or whatever is relevant around your current knowledge base. Salesforce knowledge is like the articles you have in Desk today, but with even more options. It's actually built right into your agent's view for easily accessible information and faster time to resolution. It's also embedded in your service website and helps your customers help themselves faster. There are many ways that you can leverage knowledge to benefit your agents and customers in Service Cloud. At Salesforce, we actually use articles for both internally and externally facing information. Things like help articles, frequently asked questions, product walkthroughs, known issues, and more. If you think you'd like to move your articles from Desk.com to Service Cloud, check out our resources on that topic. There's an article specifically geared towards publishing your Desk.com knowledge topics and articles on the Salesforce community using our free migration tool. And I'll share a link to that in the chat window as well.
Great, thank you, Holly. So at this point in your planning, I want to make sure that we stay on time here so that we can share the stories and timeline and have time for Q&A. Once you've gone through your vision and the granularities, at this point it's important not to forget two nuances that affect a lot of our customers. The first is business projections, and the second is going to be training. And Holly will cover the training piece in a moment. For business projections, we're going to zoom out of the details. We're going to think holistically again about your business and the vision. And in many of my customer conversations, there comes a time when we need to talk about whether there are things like business seasonalities, growth or reduction projections, and things that you need to account for that are related. When discussing this topic internally with department leads or maybe your executives, I encourage you to start thinking about how to effectively manage these changes within the team. So questions you might consider. Do you anticipate any of the following? Do you anticipate growth in any of the following? Things like your business headcount or maybe your customer base, the service offerings. That could be channels, that could be hours, it could be just teams in general. And then with keeping those upcoming changes in mind, with keeping any business seasonalities in mind that you have, are these busier seasons or are these changes going to affect your bandwidth to migrate? Or are they going to affect what types of automations you need to plan for that matter most to you? So I would start thinking about the business in that regard as well, to be able to properly plan for your transition and determine whether or not these are things that should be established right out of the gate, or perhaps it's more appropriate to accommodate them in a phased implementation approach. There may also be other questions specific to your business that you typically address, so I do encourage you to include those in this section for your planning as well.
Great points. So now that you've thought through some of your transition plan, your service channels, your overall vision, you need to consider training for the new platform. So quite simply put, how do you want to train your users? You'll want to plan for how you're going to onboard end users, when you're going to onboard them. And, of course, we recommend doing this before you completely move on to Service Cloud and away from Desk.com. So where will it fit in your timeline? And who will be responsible for training your teams on Service Cloud? Additionally, what resources will your users have available to them in order to successfully adopt the new platform and deliver incredible service? Do you have a trainer on staff, or will you equip your support managers to hold training sessions? I know this is a lot of questions. It's really meant to get you thinking. So don't worry if you don't have all of those things completely thought out or all of those questions answered. Towards the end of our webinar series, we will be delivering an agent training webinar, and that's coming sometime in the summer.
And that's a really great reminder, Holly. I know that there are a lot of questions posed here. That's why I want to make sure you guys have access to this recording after the session, that really we're using this to help jumpstart the thought-provoking process of how you want to plan and really optimize in this opportunity to adopt a new solution. I know personally, I'm really excited about the agent training webinar later this year. I think training is extremely important to think about as you're designing and implementing your new solution. And change management with your agents can be very successful if you set up channels for two-way open communication, if you're setting expectations, and if you're delivering on their needs. And a lot of times, all of that can be addressed with how you're planning out and executing your training. So that brings another great point, though, on expectations. Once you are successfully implemented, how will your team and how will your management want to measure your success? For example, will you be measuring adoption? And what are your key service metrics? These are important to think about in your plan because it can determine your timeline. It can determine what features you use and also what points of data are most important to you for reporting. Often, however, I think this question is overlooked. How will your business define a successful transition and adoption of Service Cloud? Adoption of the tool is going to be important. It ensures your customers are receiving the service you intended. And so think about what metrics are going to be most important to you to measure that adoption. It might also help bubble up some new service KPIs that are going to be valuable to you too. Overall, though, if you find a good number of users are not leveraging the system as much as they should be, it could be a sign that you need to revisit training. And we recommend measuring adoption early on so that you can see the strongest return on your investment.
Yeah, just great points. And I really love that we have these example adoption dashboards as the visual aid for this topic, because there are a few ways that you can actually handle adoption. I used to work for an organization. We used Service Cloud, and we used to have a live feed of our customer satisfaction survey results and responses on our website at all times. And that's like the good, bad, the ugly. And I love that, actually. And I even liked it when I worked in the position because it promoted a really healthy sense of competition and pushed us towards full adoption of the tool, because adopting the tool meant better service to our customers. And Jess and I both know of customers that actually use dashboards like the ones on this screen example on large screens around their office, again, to promote adoption and to promote kind of healthy competition.
Hey, Holly, I have an ad hoc question for you here live.
Okay.
This dashboard, I know you and I pulled it. It is a screenshot. We didn't make this up, guys, in Photoshop or anything. This came directly out of Service Cloud. Can you talk a little bit about how easy it is to set up a dashboard or have metrics like this at your fingertips when you move on to the Service Cloud platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in Service Cloud Lightning, it's really easier than ever to build things like reports and dashboards because we've got fantastic drag and drop functionality, really colorful graphs. It's actually super intuitive if you're using a Service Cloud trial today, or maybe if you've seen a recording of these things in the past. But one thing that I actually love about Service Cloud that is a little bit different than your experience in Desk.com is that we have something called the App Exchange. So the two screenshots of dashboards that you're seeing here were actually pre-built by Salesforce Labs and downloaded into a service org. So they were actually pre-built without the user having to do anything, except maybe do a little bit of customization towards the exact metrics that they wanted to see. So the App Exchange is kind of like the App Store on your smartphone. It's an amazing place to find things like pre-built adoption dashboards that are really going to help you maximize the return on your investment in Service Cloud. And these dashboards are free.
Thanks, Holly. I think some of the customers I speak with, they don't necessarily know where to begin to measure adoption, or they don't know where to begin to start establishing their own service KPIs. With Desk, you had business insights. The metrics were basically handed to you. Those were the standard industry metrics. They may or may not be as valuable to your business as maybe your vision for the future. So there are these pre-built options for you, but you can customize this extensively. So if you're looking for a place to get started, that's available on the App Exchange, ready to go. If you want to go a bit more sophisticated or a little bit more advanced, you are more than welcome to use the different objects and the different data points in Service Cloud to create your own reports and then visualize those within dashboards. So thanks for chiming in there, Holly. And I really appreciate you sharing that story.
Yeah, no problem. Just can I actually say one more thing about that slide? I'm sorry. What you're talking about made me think of it. So for everybody on the line, one more thing I'd love to mention is that you can see on the left-hand side that user login dashboard is measuring how many users are logging in the last 7 days. So it's really important for us to note that these dashboards are real time and it's constantly live updates. And for those of you thinking, wow, adoption would be really good to talk about in Monday morning meetings, one of the great features of dashboards in Service Cloud is the ability to have them sent to you via email on a defined schedule. So, with things like adoption dashboards, you have a lot of options to keep things moving in the right direction. Thanks, Jessica.
Of course. So moving along, I do want to make sure that we can share another story related to our customers and related to Service Cloud. I've been working closely with Spot Hero in Chicago. Spot Hero is a parking spot reservation company. They leverage B2B service and inventory on Service Cloud, as well as B2C service and reservations. If you're unfamiliar with what Spot Hero is, if you're in a major city and you're looking to find a parking spot, I recommend checking out their app and business model. It is very streamlined and easy to use. I use it all the time simply because I like to find really cheap and convenient parking. But Spot Hero, they joined me at Dreamforce. Like I said, I've been really close to their success here as far as moving from Desk.com to Service Cloud. And their approach was as follows. They were very thoughtful in their planning phase. So as you're planning for your transition, as you're working through what you want your vision to be, your channels, what to do with your data, your business projections, et cetera, that's what I'm talking about. They were really thoughtful and they took 2 months just to plan. And I think that's a long time when I compare it to other customers, but it's going to give us some great context for our session here. They thought about the categories and questions posed today, as well as others specific to their service organization and vision. For example, they call their support agents heroes. And so they wanted to make sure that they planned properly for their heroes, that they planned properly for their customers, and that they planned properly for their growth. While planning took about 2 months, the rest of their transition from configuration and implementation all the way through training, that took about another 2 to 3 months. Again, they were really thoughtful in how they planned that architecture, and they were learning a lot along the way. Now, with this success story and with this customer story, there were a couple of tips. After moving to Service Cloud, I sat down with Spot Hero's support and operations and systems manager, and we talked about how their transition went. And we also talked about what they wish they would have done differently. And so I have 2 pieces of advice that I do want to share with you. First, based on Spot Hero's experience, Nate Peace here, he recommended a single date cutover strategy, and that's a mouthful, so I'll explain. In Spot Hero's transition plan, the agents ended up using both Desk and Service Cloud simultaneously for about 1 or 2 weeks. And I think that was about July of last year, which meant they were duplicating efforts in 2 systems and then toggling back and forth. However, with a single date cutover strategy, you embrace 100% adoption on the new solution from day one. So that strategy ties back to your data plan. That's going to tie back to your training plan. It's going to probably tie back to how you're measuring your success as well. So that's why all of these categories, they're all related as you really start to sketch out what your plan is for transition. Second, Spot Hero recommended being more thoughtful about training, specifically towards their agent needs. They set up a single training session. It actually might have been over 2 days, but it was a single session in theory. And in hindsight, they would have liked to offer real-time training while everyone was onboarding and using the solution for the first time. So probably do a phased approach here. Do that single training session, get everyone familiar with and on board with the processes that you're proposing, but then offer on-site or real-time support as they're using the system and questions pop up. Some people learn better being hands-on. And that's one of the points that Nate here at Spot Hero made to us last year at Dreamforce. Nevertheless, I do want to re-emphasize Spot Hero has had some amazing results and a really quick return on their investment. They were able to decrease their average case handle time by 11%. That's a really important metric for them because, as you can imagine, I'm driving around Chicago. I'm trying to find my parking spot. Someone might be in my parking spot. That's my worst nightmare. I might not be able to get to my parking spot because there's a fire truck in the way, etc. I need to call in and I need someone to help handle and resolve my case immediately. So an 11% decrease is exceptional. And they did that in just a few weeks' time, by the way. They were also able to reduce onboarding agent training by 20%. This was an unexpected return on investment for them. They were not expecting to really move metrics there, but they were really excited by this because as they're hiring and growing, they're able to get agents ramped up and on the phone with customers sooner. They also improved their customer satisfaction response rate by nearly 15%. And they added transparency and collaboration with other internal teams at Spot Hero who were also using the Salesforce platform. So they were using Sales Cloud. They also have Analytics Cloud. It really allowed their teams to cross-collaborate. And for some of you on the line, that might be a really important aspect for getting everyone on the same platform and using similar solutions to get a variety of departmental tasks and requirements done. So definitely wanted to make sure that I shared that note. Okay.
Thank you, Jessica. I love that story. So now I want to start kind of bringing everything together for you and summarizing so that we have a little bit of time for questions at the end. So I want to remind you, we've reviewed a number of important topics today to help you plan your transition. And they're all here on the screen. So these topics and the questions posed really should be taken back to your team to discuss the needs of your service organization today and the needs that you anticipate in the near future. Once your vision is established, your transition plan will begin to dive into topics a little bit more deeply, like your data, your knowledge base, your customer support portal, the channels you'll be supporting, and more. So thinking through your transition and establishing a project team early on will allow you to have open and productive conversations with your business and help you realize the opportunity your team has in leveraging a solution like Service Cloud. It's also a great opportunity to learn more about and increase your Salesforce experience. So we really do recommend using the questions posed here today, as well as any others that might emerge from your team, to help successfully plan your move and improve adoption early on when it is time to roll out Service Cloud. So as you revisit how you are and how you want to be delivering service, you have this fantastic opportunity to give your agents and customers an innovative and streamlined experience, one that keeps up with that evolution of technology that I was talking about, and is going to keep up with your customers' needs. And let's face it, their growing expectations for connectivity and support. As a Desk.com customer, you have available to you the power of Salesforce at Desk.com pricing. So if you take advantage of our license exchange before Desk's retirement in March of 2020. For more information about that, contact your Salesforce account executive.
Great, thank you, Holly. And so as Holly mentioned, this is a great opportunity. And to supplement the planning categories covered today, we've also dropped in a sample timeline. This is going to capture some high-level stages while envisioning your transition. And I do want to reiterate, this is just an example. It's based on a scenario of a customer using specific features that are noted in the purple box over on the right-hand side. So in most cases, when a customer has 10 or fewer users, maybe leveraging a handful of groups, maybe 1 or 2 dozen case custom fields or labels in Desk, 15 or fewer macros, and basic case routing automation or basic site support. This is an average timeline to estimate or plan for, and it's approximately 2 to 4 months long. You can see the stages or milestones that I broke out include considerations in your contract, 1 to 3 weeks, Planning and designing, so working with your team on your vision, your resources, your timeline. That's a lot of what we focused on here today. You could do that in 1 week to 4 weeks. Then there's the actual configurations and implementation. This is when you would set everything up in Service Cloud, the features, the processes, move your data over and begin scheduling that testing in preparation for your go live. And then, of course, don't forget about how you're going to train and measure as you go live and thinking about how that fits into your timeline. So I recommend you define your project stages. They might match this, they might be different, and then append realistic timeframes for those stages during which you can explore, you can plan, architect, and launch your Salesforce Service Cloud instance. Now, if you plan to work with a third-party implementation partner, they can advise you and set expectations for your own project stages and timeframes, which may align similarly or be different than this. Again, your use case will generate a timeline specific to your business. Now, to help you get started with planning, we've highlighted a few key resources verbally. I know Holly's talked about Trailhead. We've talked about our upcoming webinar calendar, specifically that data migration session that I'm super excited about. But for those of you on the line also using Salesforce within your organization, maybe you're subscribed to Premier Success, we've also included our accelerators here. These are new accelerators we launched in the last few months. And do note for everyone here on the line, whether it's the trails or the events or more that you're interested in, this slide will be included in the PDF available to you today or tomorrow so that you can click through on the hyperlinks. But a lot of this can be found, like we mentioned, at Trailhead, as well as the desk.com support center, so support.desk.com.
Yeah, and as Jessica mentioned, we have a variety of resources to help you begin your journey. So based on your readiness, we've summarized 3 key next steps to help with your transition. That first one there, the starter. If you're just getting started and really looking to learn more, definitely check out the Desk to Service Cloud Trailhead or the Service Cloud Trailheads. Trailhead, I'm going to say it again as a reminder, it's a free learning journey on all things Salesforce. We do use it internally. Our customers enjoy collecting points and badges to increase their knowledge. It's really fun. I taught myself how to build reports and dashboards using Trailhead. It was actually very easy. Secondly, if you're well on your way to making the transition and you want to dive into a specific topic, like, for example, migrating data, make sure to check out that webinar calendar that I shared in the chat window for the upcoming data migration sessions. That's also on Jessica's resource slide. And then more advanced, if you're in the middle of either of those suggestions, we recommend starting your Service Cloud trial, which is designed specifically for Desk.com customers. Okay, so with the time remaining, Jessica and I are going to review any questions that you may have already posted to the question widget in the GoToWebinar. If you have questions on today's material or about planning your transition, now is a great time to post that question.
Awesome, thanks, Holly. So we're going to dive in now to the questions portion. Like Holly mentioned, I've been working busily behind the scenes to pull some of these up. One question that we already received, Holly: our company wants to move to Service Cloud at our next renewal. Okay, so you have a contract, you have a renewal date. How does that work logistically? I'm really glad to hear that you'd like to move at your next renewal. Your renewal is an excellent time to plan for your transition to Service Cloud. If we look back at the timeline slide, so let me try to back up here. Perfect. I recommend aligning your renewal to the first half of this timeline. So at Desk, we can offer you a short courtesy extension of your Desk seats so that your team can continue using Desk while your service subscription is activated. And that would be then when you're in the progress of configuring it for your business. So here in the upfront, as you're considering your contract, as you're working through what your plan and timeline is, that's when I recommend actually subscribing to Service Cloud and making the move from a contract standpoint. We'll extend that Desk.com courtesy contract, and using your renewal is a great event for you to work towards, kind of that compelling event for your timeline, but a really great way logistically to time this out. So thanks for that question. All right, another question, and this has to do with third-party implementation partners. If I'm working with a third-party consultant, can they help me plan my transition? Another great question. Yes, our certified Salesforce partners are experts on Service Cloud, and they work every day with customers setting up their service solutions. They understand very simple and complex use cases, and they're going to help you bring your vision to life in your configuration. So if you have very specific or sophisticated needs, I would definitely recommend engaging a third-party partner. You can also work with that partner kind of in a hybrid capacity. That's something that Spot Hero did. They were able to specifically define what they wanted to learn and do themselves, as well as define where they needed help and where the partner could lend their expertise to help their process run smoothly in the configuration stages, the training stages, and then the go live as well. Okay, another question that's come through. How can I learn more about features available to me on Service Cloud? So I'll start first. If you attended the Introduction to Service Cloud Lightning webinar earlier this month, or maybe it was last month, that was a really great start. From there, I recommend talking to your account executive at Salesforce. That way you can dive into the specifics for your organization, and we can best align the features that you loved or needed out of Desk.com and how those features are available to you and the benefits of those features on Service Cloud. As Holly mentioned, you can also check out Trailhead. You can review any of the specific trials geared towards learning Service Cloud. And on a related note, we are going to have an admin setup webinar launching in May as well. So that might be a really good opportunity. If you're looking more from the admin feature standpoint, that would be a good opportunity for you to attend. All right, another question came through. How can I manage my Desk.com data and move it to Service Cloud? So this is a great question. I mentioned this is one of the most popular questions that Holly and I get. We have mentioned there is a new webinar starting in May that dives into that particular topic. Again, this is about moving your desk data to Service Cloud. So I recommend registering for that webinar. They can really dive into that. As an FYI, if those dates and times don't work out for you, at least register. That way you'll be on the mailing list to receive the digital recording and presentation slides. And then also too, Holly mentioned the App Exchange. We have a Service Cloud data migration tool on the App Exchange. You might want to test that out, especially if you're new to Salesforce and you're going to be starting up a new Service Cloud org. All right, Holly, I feel like I've been talking a bit here. Why don't you chime in with some of the other questions?
Yeah, we're getting some fantastic questions. So one that I want to address live came from Jonas. Jonas, thank you so much. So what the question is really is just in the 10 questions list, number 5 mentions the self-service support portal, and then number 7 refers to a knowledge base. The question is, aren't they the same thing? Or are the knowledge base and the self-service portal two different products? So I think that's a fabulous question. So I'll start with a high-level answer. So technically, the knowledge base and the community or the self-service portal are two different products. They are products that are included for you in this transition to Service Cloud, but they do work together. So a knowledge base is really something that's going to house all of your internally and or externally facing articles and FAQs. But they do work with the self-service portal, meaning that the knowledge base you have built out in Service Cloud is not only available to your agents, but it's also something that you can have available on your community or on that self-service website. So they're basically working together to give your customers all of the information that they need kind of at their fingertips. So just kind of one last piece of clarification, a customer would go to the self-service portal on your community or on your help site, and usually there's sort of like a search bar or something to help access your knowledge base. Your customer says, you know, I'm having a problem with my password or something like that. And your self-service portal, which is the community, will access your Service Cloud knowledge base to answer that question and provide an article. So Jonas, I hope that helps. If you need further clarification, feel free to send a response into the questions window.
Thanks, Holly. I was going to chime in. Jill, I saw a couple of your lines that came through. It's really just trying to figure out, you know, maybe you are a small business and you don't have either the timeline runway or the resources to really plan and make the switch. You can do it quickly. So if you think back to the data strategy, if you want to take all of your data with you, if you're going to be spinning up a new Service Cloud instance, maybe you don't yet have anything on Salesforce, I would recommend using the App Exchange data migration tool. It's pretty point and click. Even I can use it, and I'm not super technical. But you'll be able then to take what you had in Dust.com and nearly programmatically move that over to Service Cloud. There will be some things that you'll need to take into consideration, making sure that when you're moving data, you have somewhere for that data to go in the new system. But I would recommend spinning up a trial and giving that a go and seeing if that helps you. And if you have any specific questions on that Service Cloud data migration tool from the App Exchange on Salesforce, then I would recommend reaching out to our support team and they can help you there. But that's probably a question top of mind for everyone. What if you just want to take what you have in Desk and quickly move it over? If you have that Service Cloud trial, or if you're going to spin up a new org, that's one quick and easy way to do it. There was another similar question. Sorry. If I recently migrated my Desk.com data to the trial, what happens to it if your trial expires? Work with our team. If that's the org that you want to keep, I would work with our team, make sure that that trial doesn't expire, because you can convert your trial into your, what we call like the production org. So if you decide to sign up for Service Cloud before your trial ends, you can just kind of flip the lights. It'll stay there for you. And you wouldn't lose any of the work or configurations that you've been testing in that trial environment, Joshua.
Yeah, we've got some other great questions here, Jess. Thank you for taking those. So one of the questions, I did type an answer in for the question, but I want to address it live as well. Kevin asked a great question about integration. So if you have other tools that you're thinking about using that you'd like to consider integrating with Service Cloud, that's definitely something, of course, that you want to be thinking through as you plan your transition. Integrations is definitely something that you can address with your account executive as you're going through, the details of moving to Service Cloud. But I do want to take this opportunity also to bring up the App Exchange again, because a lot of the tools that you're using today, whether it be, a chat collaboration, something like Slack, or I don't know, maybe a survey tool, something like that. A lot of those tools are actually available as apps via the App Exchange that you can simply download into your Service Cloud org. So that's something to consider. Not every integration is necessarily going to be as complex as it sounds. It really just depends on the tools that you want to use. So maybe it's a good time to really evaluate the tools that you're using now. Make sure they're things that you want to continue using for the betterment of your agents and your customer experience, and make a list of what is the most important to you, because you can start sort of browsing the App Exchange or thinking through what really it'll take to integrate those tools. We got another question. I know we're running out of time that I'd like to answer. Carol is asking if we offer training for the agents. So while we don't offer customized training for your agents, we are here to support you, and we've created a lot of great resources around those topics. The reason that we don't provide agent training, right, is because everybody's business is different. So Carol, how you use Service Cloud isn't going to be the same as how we use Service Cloud at Salesforce, and so on and so forth. So it's really important that your training model be contingent upon your business, your products, your metrics, and your expectations. But if you have specific questions around how to train, or you feel you need some support in that area, definitely let us know. Desk is here to support you absolutely until that retirement date in 2020. So let us know. But also check out that Desk to Service Cloud site that Jessica and I have been referencing a lot. It will be, again, on that resources slide when you get this PDF, because there are resources there as well.
Great. We did get a question about where do we get the service migration tool. That's awesome. Actually, I think Holly and I take that for granted sometimes. The service migration tool is available on Salesforce's App Exchange. It's called the Service Cloud Migration Tool. And I believe it's going to be something specifically discussed in the data migration webinar, but I know we have a lot of documentation about it, including a link to it in our support site. So I'm going to try to dig that up here, and maybe Holly, you can in the background dig up from our support site the service migration tool documents and where we have a link to that, so that you guys can really start to test drive that. And Chris, I'm going to go ahead and send this to you as well so that you have the written response.
Yeah, let's see if I can share a link to that in the chat window so that everybody benefits from it.
And there's still a little bit of time left. If you guys have questions, please feel free to type them in here. I feel like, Holly and I are moving as fast as I can through them, but we covered several there right away. As you're thinking about your plan, as you're thinking about how you want to transition, first and foremost, I definitely recommend checking out our webinars. If you've been attending, you know that you get a little bit of different flavor each time. We have our whole team on board here with creating the content and delivering these to you so that you can be as successful as possible. So I do recommend attending a variety of the sessions if you have time. And also too, if your renewal is coming up soon, working with your AE on what an appropriate consideration and evaluation timeline looks like. I have customers that, again, can make those considerations and evaluation in a week's time, and others that take a little bit longer, depending on their complexity for the use case or how many users they simply have on Dust.com. So definitely touch base there to see what your options are. And also too, as we're presenting this webinar, I'd love to actually pull up for you the webinar calendar. I just need to try to get out of my screen here. It's a little bit of a challenge.
Jessica, while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and share. Actually, I decided to share the link to our Migrating Your Data category on the Desk to Service help site. It does include that data migration feature that was specifically asked about, but it includes all of the other resources and tools for data-specific questions and topics. Mm-hmm. I'm sharing that in the chat window. Feel free to bookmark that, save that, browse through those options based on what's going to make the most sense for your organization. And Jessica, one other thing I'd like to ask of the group, just kind of as you're working on your screen there, if there are other topics that you think would be helpful related to Desk.com to Service Cloud in this transition in the offering, please let us know. Feel free to shout some things out in the questions panel or in the chat window if you have some suggestions.
That's a great suggestion there, Holly. We are open to suggestions. So while you can see we've put together a great path here to get everyone started, to introduce you to Service Cloud, getting you started with your trial. Today we started, planning your move to Service Cloud. This is the session you're in presently. We're running this again twice next week. After that, in May, let me just toggle over. We have that data migration webinar that I feel like I've over-explained or over-promoted, but I'm really excited about it because I think that it answers a lot of the questions that bubble up to me in my conversation. So again, I do recommend registering for that if you can. There is that admin setup webinar. I think that that's going to be really valuable. And as you come back to this page, we have things posted through May, but June, July, and August calendars are coming up here shortly. So we mentioned that agent training webinar that's coming later this summer as well. So as this journey continues, as time continues to progress and you think about what it is that you need, one, let us know what those topics are, but two, I recommend coming to these webinars and hearing from our point of view, the experience we have with our thousands of customers and what we are hoping to provide to you to make your transition as seamless as possible and as successful as possible. Okay, I'm going to open up that questions widget just one more time.
So there is a question that we can answer live, and it may have already been addressed. The question is, if I want to move all data, then what are the options and who will be taking care of migrations? Is it chargeable? And if yes, how much? So great question. The answer to this question is really dependent on your personal migration strategy. So we did touch on this throughout today's session, but take a look at that data migration link that I shared, because migrating your data is a very specific topic based on your needs and your organization. We mentioned thinking through whether or not you want to bring in all of your historical data, or if you want to bring in just some of it, or none of it, right? So those options are really up to you. If you are looking at a complex data model with a lot of data, then it might not be a bad idea to take advantage of a Salesforce implementation partner. And we can recommend those to you. Your account executive specifically at Salesforce can recommend those to you. And that cost, I know that was part of the question, is really contingent upon your needs and upon what partner or avenue that you choose. But do know that there are absolutely free options for your data. It's really just going to depend on your needs. So if you have more questions about that, please feel free to write into us or browse, like I said, that article that we shared. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. So on that note, we are up at time here. Thanks again for joining us today. If we weren't able to address your question live, note our support team will be reviewing any remaining questions. They'll work to get you an update or answer shortly, but I do think we covered all of these. So I do want to thank you for your attention and your engagement. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Jessica. Bye-bye.